third webinar in a series that ICT Educators New South Wales are running. We welcome lots of people today, this afternoon, from all over Australia, but overseas as well. And thank you for joining us. My name's Karen Binns, and I'm the current president of ICT Educators New South Wales. We have Brian from the board in the chat here, and he's our webmaster and all things notable Google, and a great colleague. And we don't work at the same schools, but we do a lot of inter-school activities together. So welcome, everyone. And I'm going to hand over to Brian to introduce Chris.
Well, obviously, thank you, Karen. I'm Brian. I teach again in the Sutherland Shire and a primary school teacher, however, very passionate about all things Google, as well as seeing, educators lift the bar on what they can get from their students. We're very, very blessed to have Chris. He is one of the top Google educators across Australia. I know even before he was working for Google, he was keynoting at many events for talking about Google, but beyond just Google, things like Adobe as well. So it is a great pleasure to have him speak with us today. He's both a innovator and a trainer. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
He's also an ADE.
No, I'm not an ADE. Oh, no, Apple wouldn't have that.
I thought you got your ADE.
No. That's a whole other story. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here today. Let's just turn that Apple thing aside for a second. It's lovely to be here today. I'm looking through the list of names, and I feel like I know half the room here. So it's lovely to see you all. Yes, my name is Chris Betcher. For those that don't know me, I have been a teacher for most of my career. I was originally an art teacher, believe it or not, and then kind of drifted from art into digital media and computing and multimedia. And eventually someone said, "Can you run a network?" I went, "Sure, how hard can that be?" So I've kind of dabbled in a lot of this stuff. And then a couple of years ago, I started doing a lot of teacher training, working with teachers, presenting at conferences and stuff. Ended up working with a company called EdTech Team that you might have heard of. They did the Google Summits around Australia for a number of years. And then 2 years ago, I was I actually quit my previous job because I wanted to semi-retire, believe it or not, and I got an offer from Google to come and do some work from them. So I thought, well, you don't get that offer every day, so I'll do that for a couple of years and see what happens. So I've been at Google for about a year and a half now. My role is the program manager for G Suite adoption, which I like to explain to people is like Google makes all this great stuff for schools. My job is to help schools understand what's there and to help them get the most out of it. That's kind of what adoption is. My email address is there in case you ever want to reach out. Feel free. I try and be helpful wherever I can. So if you've got questions or anything you need to know about Google-related stuff. I remember when my school, I used to teach at a number of schools, but the last one I was at was Presbyterian Ladies College in Sydney. And I remember having conversations with the director of IT there. We'd go, "We really like this Google stuff, but there's just no people at Google. Like if there's ever a problem or you've got a question, there's just nobody to ask because there's no people. It's all machines." Turns out there is people at Google. There is an education team at Google it's a smallish team, but it's definitely a team there. And so you can reach out to us and we'll definitely try and help you if we can. Now I did something really dumb today. When I was asked to do this presentation, in my head, I'm thinking it was an introduction to Google Classroom. And then Brian and Karen were just chatting before you guys arrived and said, "Oh, so it's an introduction to G Suite." I went, "Oh, okay." I'm thinking it's Classroom. So I'm mainly going to talk about Classroom today. But if you have questions about other stuff along the way, please do ask. Now, if you've not used Google Meet before, that's the video conferencing tool we've got right now. It is, if you put your mouse up in the top corner there, you'll see a little speech bubble. You can press on that and you can type your questions in the chat there like this. Hi, oops, sorry. Can't type. Hi. So you see that speech bubble popped up there. So if you've got questions, pop them in the chat. I will definitely try and answer them as we go along, if I can. And if I can't, hold them over and I'll get back to you.
And we can definitely get you back again, Chris, to share more about the Google products as well.
Awesome. No worries. All right. Now I'm juggling many balls here at the moment because we're doing this webcast. I got 2 Chromebooks going. I've got multiple accounts logged in. So, you know, what can possibly go wrong? I'm going to try and switch between both the slides I'm showing you. I've also got a live demonstration of a Google Classroom. I'm also logged in another window as a student. Hopefully I can show you the teacher view and the student view and some other stuff as well. So fingers crossed, guys. Just a couple of things to get started. I go to this window. So when we say the word G Suite for Education, I know a lot of you in the room probably already use Google and you know what this means, but some people may not. So just really quickly, G Suite for Education is a suite of tools for schools. It's obviously something that gets used not just within schools, but outside schools as well. So if you have a Gmail account, for example, you actually have access to most of these tools anyway as a consumer level service. We run a version for enterprise, we run a version for nonprofits, but we also run a version for education. It's worth pointing out that the education version of G Suite is functionally exactly the same or very similar the same to a Gmail account, but from the point of view of privacy and security and the policies around it is very, very, very different. Okay, so if you get a Gmail account and you use it, then there will be advertising in it, for example. Google will use some of the data in there to monetize the service. That's how they offer it for free. But when you move to the education version, G Suite for Education, no advertising, no mining of data, no access to students' information. All the data resides with the party that holds it, which is the school. And by corralling all these services into G Suite for Education, we're handing the control and the management of that information to the school itself. So Google doesn't make any claims on the information of students or in that educational context. I think that's a really important thing because there is a general perception out there in the world that, you know, Google tracks your data and uses your ads and all that sort of stuff. And that might be true in the consumer space. Absolutely not true in the education space. Really important point. The little icons you can see on the screen there are all the different components of G Suite. And some of them will probably recognize. There's Google Docs, or Doc Sheets and Slides, which if you think about it is kind of our version of Word, PowerPoint, Excel, if I can be blunt about it like that. But there's also Google Drive, which is our storage solution. There's Google Keep, there's Calendar, there's Gmail, there's Zoom, I nearly said Zoom, oh my God. There's Meet, which is what we're using right now to do the video call. And all that's held together with an administration console that someone within your school or within your organization has the administrative rights to control who can do what. It's a really important point because obviously, you know, if you just give all these services to all your students, you probably don't want kindergarten sending email. You probably don't even want year 3 chatting with people outside the school. There's lots of restrictions and things that you might want to put in place. With G Suite, you've got complete control over how that is organized, okay? Again, important point. All right, I was going to talk about, we're going to focus mainly on Google Classroom today. And Classroom, if I can just go back to that previous slide, you can see Classroom there is that one where it says Manage Your Classroom. There's 2 little icons. The green and yellow one is Google Classroom. The purple one is Google Forms, which is a data, it's a way of using forms to collect information from people, do surveys, quizzes, that kind of thing. But Google Classroom, I just want to tell you, Google Classroom originally was not part of G Suite. And it's, of all of those tools you see there on the screen, it's the one that was built specifically for education. And so, you know, while the rest of the world might have access to things like Google Docs and Slides and Sheets and so on, Classroom was built specifically for schools. And it was built to solve a really particular problem that schools faced that outside of education, people were not facing to the same degree. If you're a teacher and you're teaching a lot with Google Docs or you know, the Google Suite as part of your arsenal of tools, you're going to end up in a situation where you are sharing lots of documents with students and students are sharing lots of documents with you. And sooner or later, you end up with a mess and your Google Drive just has hundreds, potentially thousands of files that belong to all different people, and it just becomes really messy. Okay, and you've got this shared with me folder and you've got the shared folder and you've got all this stuff going on. And what the feedback we were getting from teachers was that this was They loved the functionality of Google Docs, but they hated the management aspect of it because there was so much going on. And if you're a teacher and you're a high school teacher, for example, and you're teaching, 5 different classes or 6 different classes, and each class has got 30 kids, and it gets really messy really quickly, right? And I can see Miedrag is nodding his head there, right? So you understand the problem. So Classroom was designed to solve that problem. So let me tell you what Classroom does, right? The first thing, it simplifies the distribution and sharing of documents. That's the first thing it's really designed to do. That process that teachers do where they create something, a task or a worksheet or an assignment or something for a student to do, they give that to the student does it, they give it back to the teacher, they ask for feedback, the teacher gives some feedback, gives it back to the student completes the task, hands it back to the teacher grades it, gives the mark back to the student. That process, that workflow cycle, that's what Classroom is designed to help manage. Okay, that's its job. So it tracks the student progress on the task. It provides a simple way to give feedback to students. It manages the workflow, and it acts as a communications channel for teacher and student. What it's not designed to do, and I think this is really important because I get a lot of questions from teachers who say, well, can Classroom do blah, blah, blah? And it's like, it's not, you got to think about what it's designed to do, okay? It's not an LMS. It's like an LMS, a learning management system, but it's not an LMS. It lacks many of the features that a true LMS would have. So it's no good coming to Classroom and saying, oh, why doesn't it do X, Y, Z LMS features, right? That's not what it was designed to do, although it does some of those things quite well. It's also not the actual teaching content. The actual teaching content that you'll be doing is probably going to be contained in a Google Doc or in a slides presentation or in a sheet. Or in a form, or in a what? The things that you're actually doing with students, that's not Classroom. Classroom is the mechanism to give them back and forward, but the actual work itself are things that rely on other parts of G Suite, or not G Suite. I mean, you can give kids PDF files, you can give kids links to videos, you can give kids access to folders of information. So the work and the method of distribution of the work are 2 different things. And I think it's a really important distinction. And a Classroom, the other thing it's not, is a replacement for teaching. We've done a lot, obviously, in the last few months with you guys, with teachers right around Australia and New Zealand and around the world, where we've had to very suddenly put the brakes on the traditional classroom and move to a completely online environment. And that's been tough for a lot of teachers. In the process, a lot of teachers have moved to a more digital way of working. And for some people, that's been fun and exciting, and it's taken things that they were already excited about in their physical classroom into an online space, and they've loved the experience. And for some teachers, it's been the worst thing in the world because they were avoiding computers all this time, and suddenly they had to deal up with it, right? And I don't know, you probably know people at both extremes of that spectrum. But Classroom originally was designed to be a blended learning tool. It was originally envisaged as being something that a teacher in a classroom physically with students would use to help manage workflow of that physical group of students. The fact that we just moved into a completely digital space where for many people, it became the tool that they use to manage that 100% online environment, that was a rude shock to a lot of people. It also pushed Classroom usage up. The number of people globally using Classroom, a 7-fold increase in the last 3 months. And you can imagine, some of you who manage computer systems, you can imagine whatever system you've got in place now, if it's operating at 100% capacity, and then tomorrow it's operating at 700% capacity, as you can imagine, it's a challenge. It's been a challenge. And there were times when, honestly, we were really glad that Classroom stayed online. And it did. It never went down, as far as I'm aware. But it was a really interesting experience to see that sudden load. Some of the things, we'll dive into a demo of Classroom in a second, but some of the things I just want to point out, some nice little features. There's a place in Classroom called the Stream, which is where you can have whole class discussions. I think it's probably underutilized a little bit from a lot of the examples I see of Classroom. It's a great place to have conversations. And as we moved to the COVID situation and we went 100% online, that Stream actually became the social space for a lot of classrooms. It became the space where teachers talk to students and students talk to students, and that stuff you get face to face moved online into that Stream space. Other things about Classroom is that you can deploy, when you send out tasks to students, you don't have to do every student does everything the same way. You can send out individual tasks to individual students. So you can differentiate work really easily just by simply ticking names and sending specific tasks only to some students or not others. You can also likewise deploy tasks to multiple classes at once. So for example, you might be a maths teacher and you're teaching sort of maths 1, maths 2 and maths 3, right? And they're doing the same work. So you can take the work that you'd give to all 3 classes and send it out simultaneously to all 3 classes. That saves a lot of time as well. There is the ability in here, there's a grade book inside Classroom, and you can obviously get it to just collect the marks for different tasks. You can get it to collect the marks and add them up for you. But I love the fact that you can also get it to weight those by category. So for example, you can go and create customized categories here. You see classwork, exams, homework, practical. You can put whatever you like there. You can weight it any way you like. And as you do those work, as you distribute that work to students, you can decide which task belongs to which one of those categories. And as you grade that, it will automatically do all the grading for you. A lot of people will still then take those marks and export them out into whatever marking package they might use at their school, and you can certainly do that, but you can actually weight it directly inside Classroom as well. One of the really nice things about Classroom is this overview, the student progress overview. So in a single screen, you get to see your students, you get to see all the work they've handed in, you get a little tally there to show you, in this example, it's been handed out to 6 students and all 6 of them being graded in this little sample class. You can see the list of students on the left-hand side there, and underneath each of their names, if you can make it out, there's a small comment. That's the last personal comment that the teacher made to the student. So you're getting this all at one glance dashboard for every task that you're giving your students. And the final tip before we go live into a demo is, I love this idea. I don't know if any of you use this. A teacher showed me this and I thought it was brilliant. So I tell everyone about this because I love it. I call it the lesson library. It's not a feature inside Classroom. There's nothing in, you can't go into Classroom and search for the lesson library. It doesn't exist, right? But it's a way of using Classroom to create a library of lessons. And what you do is you create a classroom and you don't put any students in there, and you put all the teachers that teach that particular grade or topic or year group or your level, and they then collect their resources in there. And when the time comes to use those resources in a real classroom, what you can do is use the reuse post function to actually just pull something out of the lesson library and use it in a real class without you having to reinvent the wheel at the time. So think of it as a templated collection of lessons that you can store away for the day you need them. Okay, and I've spoken to a number of teachers who do something like this, and they all tell me it's a real time-saving idea. So we'll have a talk about that as well. Oh yeah, this one too. You can also make a copy of existing classrooms. So if you've created a classroom and you want to reuse it for next year, maybe with some modifications, you can actually use it as a template and copy that classroom. When you copy a classroom, you don't bring across any of the student information. So all the student information goes out, all the students get taken out, all the conversations that students had get taken out, all the grades get taken out. All you end up with is a template of the class with all the classwork in it to reuse. So it basically flushes the class to reuse it. All right. With that, just take a quick look here. Karen says, why do different education Department of Education in Australia have issues and then not allow its use in schools? So New South Wales Department of Education totally uses G Suite. I mean, they offer Microsoft and G Suite. They offer the choice to schools. It's the same in Victoria. It's the same in South Australia. The Catholic system pretty much around the country, with the exception of a few little holdout dioceses, all use G Suite pretty extensively. The only real place in Australia that kind of is holding out on the move to G Suite would be Queensland. And that's not just G Suite. They actually don't even offer 365 to their students either. They're almost, and maybe if there's someone from Queensland on the call, they can throw some information in there. But from my research recently, Queensland have a very risk-averse view to anything that's cloud-based. So, but yeah, most jurisdictions around the country do use G Suite. Jenny, is that a cost factor? Well, we offer G Suite for free to schools, so there's actually no cost in using G Suite. There is a paid version of G Suite that has some extra features, but the vast majority of schools just use the free version. And so hopefully it's not a cost factor. All right, let me switch to this tab and let's just go in here. Now I'm just going to real quickly just take you through the setup of a class. Brian told me that there's a lot of people in here who are new to G Suite or new to the Google Suite. So I am going to sort of start from the beginning. If you're a bit further down the track, I'm sorry, I'll be teaching you something you know for the next couple of minutes. You'll just have to sort of roll with me for the moment. Okay, so this is Google Classroom that you're seeing here. And the easiest way to start is just go to classroom.google.com, or if you click on this little button here called the waffle, you'll usually find Classroom hiding somewhere here in the waffle, and you can see there it is right there. But regardless of how you get there, it's classroom.google.com. And then the way you'd create a brand new class is you'd click on this plus sign. Now, as a teacher, you'll see I have the option to join a class or create a class. Students, if you've set it up the right way, should only see the option to join a class, typically, okay? So as a teacher, I'm going to say create a class, and I'm going to give this class a name. I'll call this ICTENSW class, and I can add the other information in there, but I'll just leave that blank for now. That goes to create. That'll chug away for a moment and actually create a classroom space. And all those colored boxes you can see in the background there, each one of those represents a classroom space. And we did get a question, someone wrote a question in earlier about how they wanted to set that up. In fact, I'm just going to jump back to the slides for 1 second, because this was the question that someone threw in earlier, that they have 4 Year 7 digital technology classes, but they only want one classroom. So they want to easily group the students into their classes so they can assign the assignments to the class group rather than individually selecting each student from a class when assigning a task. And so I think what that person's asking, let's go back to our actual classroom. I think what that person's asking is, like, if I teach 3 classes, do I set up one classroom and put all the kids in there, or do I set up 3 different classrooms? And the truth is there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's whatever works for you. Personally, I would set up 3 classrooms, and I would use the feature I talked about earlier where you can send the one task to multiple classrooms, and I would do it that way. That would be my preferred option. And I know, Brian, you just nodded a little bit there. It looks like that's your preferred option too. I think that
with 114 students in my classroom, that's definitely the way we do it. We break them up into groups, into smaller classes, and then we send it out that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have them in one class, you set up yourself for a very, very big complication.
I think so too. And you could theoretically do it because you can assign work to only specific students.
Correct.
But I think equally you can send the same work to multiple classes and you end up with the same result. But I think having multiple classes, even if they're parallel, is probably easier from a management perspective. That's the way I would do it. Anyway, so we've got the classroom set up here. For those that are new to Classroom, you see you've got this section called Stream, Classwork, People, and Grades. And students don't see the grades, only the teacher sees that. So on the Stream page, this is where I said that conversational piece comes in. So I can leave a message for my class here. They can respond to the message. Now, here's a tip for you, and Brian, you might tell me whether you agree or disagree with this one. By default, if I go to this little gear wheel up here in the corner, this is where all the settings for the classroom are kept. By default, there's a setting here for the Stream, and it says students can post and comment. That means on that Stream conversational page on the front there, both a teacher and a student could go in and they could start one of those conversations. Now, my experience of that has been that if I let students go and start conversations on that front page, it can get pretty crazy, right? I come back on a Monday, and over the weekend, all I see is posts there about what they watched on TV or whatever, So I prefer, my sanity check is this one: students can only comment. In other words, teachers can start the conversations, students can contribute to the conversations, but they can't start new ones. That's my preferred option, might not be yours. If you really feel like a bit tough about it, you can always say that only teachers can post and comment, and that locks the kids out altogether. Again, no right or wrong answers, but I think that's something you should think about what you're comfortable with, because that's going to change the way that stream operates, and consequently probably the whole the flavor of the class, if you like. Okay, so I'm going to set that to that for now. The other new feature we've got in Classroom now is to add this generate a meet link. During COVID, of course, people were relying on video calls a lot, and so we added this feature in here where a student, where a teacher can turn this on. If I just hit save on that, you'll see now when I go back to my teacher page here, I've got a link on the front page here to set up a Google Meet. And so I'm one click away from a video call with my students. Now, very importantly, the way we've set this up is if you've got your domain set up correctly, which should typically be that teachers can set up, initiate video calls, but students can't initiate them, they can only join them. That would be best practice, okay? If you let students start video calls, you run the risk of allowing students to get into places unsupervised, okay? And I would imagine that's against most school policies. So the way this is set up is these particular links, the way that URL works is if I click that link, it will start a video call and students can join it. But if a student clicks that link, they'll get a message saying you can't start a call, okay? So long as you're launching your video calls through that link, you're covering the issue of students being left unsupervised. It also means that when you finish the call, so long as the teacher is the last one to leave the room, that meeting link will get burned and students won't be able to go in and start a new call until the teacher starts the next call. So that's it works pretty well, and there are further improvements coming to Meet as well.
And that's definitely a feature I use pretty much every day in my classroom. Even now we're back face to face to be able to share my screen with students and be able to teach and record my lessons.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so that's the stream page. That's everything you need to know there. On the classwork page, this is where all the real stuff happens in terms of Chris. Oh, that was your question. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. On the classwork page, you've got this create button here, and these are the things you can create inside a classroom: an assignment, a quiz, a question, and material, or you can reuse something you've already made before, and that's where that learning library idea comes from. So if I want to reuse something I've already got, I can click on the reuse post button. It opens up all of my other classrooms, and I go into this one called the learning library, or any of the others if I have work in another class. And I can go in here and I can pick an existing project. So maybe this Indonesia project, I can hit reuse. It's going to pull it out of that old classroom and into this new classroom. And it's just going to take a moment to do that. And 1, 2, 3, about now, there you go. So it's pulled that assignment in, and you can see it's all pre-populated. It's got the attachments. It's got all the settings on the side here. It's all good to go. So really, really quick to reuse an assignment if you've already made it and you're keeping it in another classroom. And that's what I suggest, treat a lesson library as another classroom that you can use to just pick things out of really quickly. I'll come back to this one in a second because it's got some things I want to talk about, but I'm just going to come out of there for 1 second. So that is that's reusing a post, right? Now, material, and I don't want to pick on high school teachers here, but when I first saw Classroom getting used a lot, what I saw particularly from high school teachers, would they'd be using it to give students stuff. Here's a set of notes. Here's a PDF. Here's the Board of Studies notes, whatever. Like, they just give students a lot of stuff without necessarily asking students to do stuff with them. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? That's what this thing is called, material, okay? But if all you give out is material, then you're missing a lot of the power of Classroom to manage the workflow, okay? So material is, if I click on material, you can see if I do that, I open it up, like, I can title it and describe it and add something to it, but there's no other settings in here, right? I'm literally just giving students something. Now, compare that with if I go to create an assignment. When I have an assignment, now I get to do things like set a due date, set a topic, add a rubric, add some originality reports, add a point value to it. So when I'm giving it as an assignment, I'm expecting students to do something and to take some action on this assignment. So that's the difference between the two. And then in the middle, you've got things like questions. And a question is either a multiple choice or a short answer, where I can push one question out to students and get them to respond to it. And I can make choices about whether they see each other's answers, whether they're allowed to modify the answer after they've typed their first version in. There's all sorts of controls there for doing that. And finally, quizzes. In Classroom, what it does is it uses Google Forms, and Google Forms can be turned into a quiz. So you can create a series of questions and then go into a mode where you designate that form to be a quiz and then tell it what the correct answers are. And the form will then auto mark. It will self-grade itself. So if you've already created one of those, you can come in here and attach it as an assignment. Or if you want to start from scratch, you can click this quiz assignment button and start creating it on the fly. Okay, so those are the sort of the four main things you can do inside Classroom. And the last thing there is topic, and that's you can create topics. So I might create a topic here and call it, say, English, and say add. And when that adds that topic heading, and I might create another one here. This is obviously more for like a sort of a primary level classroom where you have multiple subject areas within sort of a primary classroom. If you're a high school teacher, this might be something like, this might be a history class, and the topics might be things like the history of World War II or the suffragette movement in Australia, whatever it might be. Okay, so depending on your subject or your level, is going to very much depend on how you structure this classwork page and how you use the topic headings. Okay, the Indonesia project thing here that I've got, I might drag that down there and put it under English, for example. Right? So I can move things around. If it's not where I want it to be, I can pick it up and move it to a new location. So you don't have to get everything right first go. You can easily drag it. If I'd prefer science to be under English, I can pick up science and move it under English. So you've got a lot of flexibility about moving the page around. One nice tip that a number of teachers have given me now, especially during COVID, where there was a lot of work being done in Classroom, was that these topics tended to get very crowded after a while, and so they started to grow a lot. So one nice idea I heard was to create a topic called past work. Work, right? And so you have a topic that will sit, I'm going to sit that at the bottom there. And so when a student's done this assignment and it's no longer relevant, you can simply move it from there into the past work category. And so you're keeping the topic categories just to the things that are current, and you're moving the things that are completed and done into sort of a past work category or almost an archive. Again, that's just a way some teachers use it. You don't have to use it that way, but I hear good things about it. I'll just pause there for a second to see if there's any questions. Apparently not. Okay, we'll carry on. All right. Now, is there anything specific you guys want to know about Classroom at this point? Because I feel like I've given you the sort of introductory thing here. Hopefully you've got some little tips out of that, even if you are a Classroom user. But is there anything specific you'd like to get out of this?
Be welcome to unmute your microphone if you have any questions you'd like to ask Chris.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah. Hi, Macro.
Should you organise the layout like you just have there from today and then down the page as in the past? Like, which way do you organise it? Like the current work is at the top, or do students scroll down to where they need to be in terms of where we are in the topic?
Yeah, again, I don't think there's an absolute right or wrong answer to that. It's really what works for you as a teacher. That said, I think there's also, I was talking to a teacher out of a Western Sydney school recently, and she was saying that, like, one of the things that they've realised they need to do with Classroom, and probably any tool they want to use, to be honest, is that however they decide to use it, the teachers should get their heads together and agree that they're all going to use it in a similar way. Because otherwise you get kids going from class to class to class, and every teacher's doing it differently, and then it gets confusing. So whichever way you do it, no right or wrong answers, but you should probably at least have some agreement between you that you're going to do it a certain way.
Could I just add a comment to that too?
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the things that's really great about it, is that it's so flexible and you can do it however you like. But I'd agree with Chris that if teachers were going to put their heads together and agree on, what's the convention, but also think about just what are the general conventions that students and teachers expect to see in other applications and other software. I mean, in a lot of the social media channels, the current stuff is at the top, so it kind of makes sense to follow the convention, rather than doing things in a different way, and that's just part of that general ICT capability. So that's just my 2 cents and suggestion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I have a question about PDF documents. It's Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah, I give my students a lot of closed passages, and can you any recommended Google apps that will let them fill in I have a lot of forms that, I mean, they're PDFs, but they're editable PDFs, but sometimes they don't have Google Reader, and if I give it to them, like you can assign something to every student in the class and give them a copy of the work. I prefer that, where they get their own copy, but I can't see it live like you can with the Google Doc. But I've read Lumen PDF, but then I started reading that they read your data, they take stuff from you, and in an education setting, I don't want them doing that. They could see the kids' data, and I don't really want that to happen. Is there any recommended form, like Adobe PDF readers that allow you to edit inside like Google Docs and allow you to edit the PDF on the fly, that you can see their progress?
It's not something I do a lot of, but the tool that I hear most teachers talking about most favorably is a thing called Kami, Kami. And it seems to be like the closest thing I can see to like a web-based version of Adobe Reader.
Okay, thanks. No, because I do a lot of closed passages for all my kids, but for ESL students particularly. Yeah.
It did make me think then, Sam, when you said that. Like, I just on the screen here, you can see I'm just in the middle of setting up a new task as an assignment. And by the way, this little icon you can see here in the top corner, I'm trying to wiggle my mouse. I don't know if you can see it up where it says my task. That thing that looks like a little clipboard, that's the icon for an assignment. And if it was a question, it'd have a question mark on it. And if it was material, it'd have a different icon. So like you can tell each type of task from the icon in front of it. Worth knowing that. But when I hit this add button here and I can add things to this assignment, one of the you've said exactly, I think Mel, you said it, like it's a really flexible system. You can kind of make it do whatever you want. And that flexibility comes from allowing it to sort of be used in a way that anyone wants to use it. So for example, to add something to this task, I can add anything from my Google Drive, like literally anything from my Google Drive. So when I click on Google Drive, it's going to open up my drive. And if I go into my drive in here, and you can see I can browse around, and I've got Jamboard files and Sheets files and docs and drawings and all sorts of things. But if I hunted around here, there'd probably be PDFs and audio files and video files and all sorts of things. And I can attach any of them, okay? So any sort of file I can attach. As well as that, I can also attach things that are not in my Google Drive. So if I clicked on the File button, for example, it's going to go into, now I'm on a Chromebook, so it's going to look a little bit different to maybe what some of you are used to. But if I go in here and select files from my device, now I'm browsing the actual file system of my computer. So if I had a Word file or a PowerPoint or whatever, any file at all, a Photoshop file, right? I could attach that. Any file can be attached. Now that said, while you can attach any file, you're only going to get some of the functionality of Classroom if you're using Google-based files. So if you attach a Word file, for example, versus attaching a Google Doc, you're going to get very different functionality into what you can do with it. It's going to treat the Word document more or less like a PDF, right? So all of that sort of interactive stuff you can do with a Google Doc, you lose if you don't use a Google Doc. Okay, so it's just worth bearing that in mind. But you can attach anything. You can also attach, link to anything, so link to any website or point to any YouTube video. So between those four options, you can pretty much attach anything at all to an assignment. It can be a link to a Google Earth tour, anything at all. You've also got a create button here. So if you want to give something to students and it doesn't yet exist, you can just make it on the fly. Just click on this, create a new doc or slides or sheets, whatever, and just make it right now so you can give them something that you've created immediately. So between all of those options there, you can pretty much attach anything. So there's all that flexibility. But I did want to point out that that's this thing that if you attach something that's not a Google file, then you're forfeiting some of the ability of Classroom to work with those files because the functionality comes from it being Google-based.
Chris, while we're here, just one practical experience that I had in reference to attaching the file. I create the assignment. I pick up the file from my Google Drive. and I put into the stream for student to use. I allocate all student to use. And what I have is experience that student pick up that file or assignment, they work on that, they come back to me, and other students also come back and say, but sir, I have that a document that you posted on stream with the name of the previous student who works and answered the question. Is that something that I'm doing wrong on my side, or is something happen? And it was a Google document. It wasn't a Word document. I was a bit puzzled with that, and I didn't know how to answer. So I have trying to resolve differently, uploading once again and say, okay, change it, do something, you know. But
well, without seeing what you're doing, and without trying to sound like I'm implying that you're doing the wrong thing, because I don't want to be that guy, right? I'd be happy to connect with you afterwards, and we can have a look at it together and see if we work out what's wrong. But it's definitely not the way it's obviously designed to work.
It's
so
not
what it's doing. Then either it's got a fault or you're doing something unexpected. But either way, we can get to the bottom of it.
No problem. But exactly within this line, or what you just explained in this segment right now, how to create assignment, how to attach from where to be brought up that document. I did all that and place it into the stream as available for my student to be picked up, allocated that everybody can access it. And I have a response from some of the students saying, look, but I already have a name and answer to that assignment that you posted. So what I'm supposed to answer?
Okay. So what I will say to you is, I'm going to just switch to a different tab. So this is looking inside my Google Drive now, right? And I've just got a folder in here with a bunch of digital worksheets.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've just taken things that used to exist on paper and I've digitized them in a way that hopefully kids can do them online. And so I've got this one here. This is just a Google Doc. If I open it up, you'll see, if I just open that up and see that. So this is just literally like a worksheet. Okay, so say I want my kids to do this worksheet and I want every student to have a copy of it so they do the worksheet. Let me go back to here. Where did I put classroom? Yeah. So what I want to do here is I want to take that worksheet and attach it to this assignment, right? And I'll hit the add button. I'll go to my Google Drive. I'll find that assignment. It should be here in recent because I just opened it. There it is there. I'll add that. And then the important thing in this one here, students can view file. So when I click that, I got three options. I can set it so this document, providing it's a Google Doc, of course, can be something that every student can view. In other words, there's one copy of the file and everybody can only view it. Or students can edit, so it's one copy of the file and everybody who access can go and like actually work on it together collaboratively. Or every student gets their own copy. Now, if you choose every student gets their own copy, then what it will do is it will use that as a template and it'll make a copy for every student in the class.
Okay, I understand. My mistake is that I said edit file. So everybody edit as one file, so they have a duplicating kind of a name and section. Yeah. Okay, I understand. No problem.
Yeah, if you do edit file, literally means there's one file that many people can edit. So
many people can edit. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, if you want to do group work, that's ideal. But if you want to do individual work, then you need this last one. The other thing that's important to note too, and it's a little trap that gets some teachers, is if you forget, if you select the wrong one, or like a default, it starts by saying students can view. That's the default. If you were to click this assign button now and assign the task and then realize, oh, I didn't mean to do that, then you come back in here and you want to switch it. You can't switch it back to every student can make a copy after you've assigned it. Okay. It's just you get past that point where it can't backtrack. So if you did ever forget, you need to actually just delete that task and just recreate it again and make sure you get the correct option that time.
Okay. I understand. Excellent. Thank you.
That's okay. Now, while I'm on this,
Hi, Chris.
Yes.
What would happen if you realise halfway through the assignment that you've made that mistake? Because we've all done it. If you go back and reassign it and that, what happens to the kids' work that they've already done?
This is only going to be a mistake you make once, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
I think if that happens, you suck it up, learn from the experience, and start again.
What I do is I get.
And if that happens, then if that were me and it happened to my kids, I'd simply say, "Sorry, kids, my bad. I clicked the wrong button. I'm a duffer. Right? Can you please? I've sent you out the correct one now. Can you just go into your old assignment, copy and paste what you did into the new assignment?" I think that's.
So they don't lose access to it. They just can copy and paste over then.
Correct. Yeah, they always have the document. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Make a new assignment for them to upload the one they've worked on.
Say again.
I just create an assignment for them to upload the one I made a mistake on, so they can have they've got a copy of it. So anyway, they can make their own copy of that file anyway. So they can just copy that file, make their own copy, do their work on it, and then you make an upload assignment for the copy that you gave.
Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, the other thing you could do, just like a teacher here has the add and create button, a student also has an add and create button. So when you push something to a student can go and add or attach something to the assignment as well from their end. So if they've previously got the assignment, they could just take the one they've half worked on and attach it to the assignment. So when you get back, you get 2 pieces of work instead of 1. That would be another solution.
I've had an issue with kids forgetting to submit. Like you can see the work's there, but they haven't submitted it properly. Like they haven't hit the extra button.
Yeah.
There's a turn in or something, but I'm not quite sure of the wording because I don't see the student's side.
Yep.
But they forget to press submit. The work's sitting there, but I can't kind of access it. I can see that they've got something on their screen, but it's like they haven't submitted it so I have access to it anymore. So
there's 2 very common requests we've had for Classroom, and at this stage they're not in the product yet. One is for the teacher to be able to see a student view, to be able to like flip a switch and see it as the student sees it. That would be handy. It's not there yet, and it's actually more technically difficult than you might think, but I'm sure it'll come eventually. And the other request we've had is for the teacher to be able to submit a task on behalf of a student. So when a student has forgotten to hit that submit button, that a teacher can go and do it for them. I can see kind of moral and ethical issues about doing that if we start to give teachers the ability to do things for their kids, we're taking, I don't know, there's a whole discussion we could have around that. Right now it doesn't exist. It's simply right now a matter of teaching your kids, don't forget to hit the submit button. And just like we teach them everything else that they just have to do something a certain way, this just becomes one of those things, I think.
I think so too, and it's the same for any LMS though.
It is, absolutely, yeah. So just while I've got halfway through this, what I'll do is I'll just finish this off here. So we've got a task. I've attached something to it. I've made a copy for each student. Over here, I can assign a point value. So if I prefer it not to be out of 100, I want it to be out of, I don't know, say 10. I can just type a 10 in there like that and just change the grading. If I don't want to grade it at all, there's an ungraded option. So if I just want to give the student the work, but I'm not actually going to count it towards their grade, I can do that. If I add a due date, so let's make this due next week, for example. If you add a due date, it will actually drop it into the student's calendar. And for students who use their calendar regularly, that's huge because it means that all of this work that they're getting from all these different teachers or you know, all these different subjects is going into their calendar and they're now getting reminders about it. So that's a big deal. High school students particularly because they get the reminders on their phone as notifications. I remember year 11s telling me that was a game changer when notifications happened. In here, you can attach it to a topic. Remember the topics we created before. So let's just make this one English, right? And these 2 things here, I just want to explain these for a second. Rubrics. How many of you grade with rubrics? Show of hands, anyone? A few people. Okay, so if you grade with rubrics, you can now go in here and attach a rubric. You can either create one from scratch, reuse one that's in an existing task, or just import one from a Google Sheet. And I'll just quickly go into the create screen here and just show you how you create it. So you give a criteria. So one of your criteria might be, I don't know, spelling and grammar, right? And then you write a description of the criteria, and then you how many points. So if they're at the very basic level, they might get 1 point, and you give it a level here. This is called basic, and then you write a description of what that performance looks like. And then you could add another level and another level and another level and another level, and you've created the levels. You obviously fill that in. Then you add your second criteria, and then you create your levels for that, and so on. And so that's how you create the rubric in here. Now, because I've already got one I've already made one, so let's go and show you what that will look like. If I go import from Sheets, I'll actually have a little stash of rubrics here somewhere that I can show you, rubric imports. So I'm just going to pull this one in here for essay, right? So I'll pull that in here. You can see it's importing it. There's the rubric for this particular one. You can see there are 3 criteria. Each criteria has 3 performance standards, and it's graded out of 1, 3, and 5, which gives it a grade of 15. Interestingly, if I was to have this task out of 10 and the rubric was marking out of 15, when I grade it, it will actually scale it for me automatically. So even though I've marked it out of 15, it'll scale it down to out of 10. So it takes care of all the back-end mathematics for you. So let's just do that. I'll hit the assign button here and assign that out there to my student. And some of you have said you are not familiar with what the student view of this looks like. So I'm just going to switch over here now to my student view. Oh, you know what? I haven't put the student in the class. I should do that, shouldn't I? So this particular class, there is a code there, 7Doug2IY. It's a bit small to read. Make it bigger for you. There you go. 7Doug2IY. That's the code for this class. I'll just copy that. Copy. Now, when I switch over to the student view, which is this view, so I'm now in here as a student. What a student would do to join the class is they'd click on the plus sign. You notice I didn't get the option to create a class here because ideally students shouldn't be able to create classes. And I'll put the code in there like that and join. And what it's doing now is it's just taking that code, going into Classroom, main database, finding which class is that they should belong to, brings it out, and now the student's a member of that class. Now, if this has worked as planned, I should be able to go into the classwork page here, and I should have an English section and my task. So here's the task for this student to do. And it's still just loading. There you go. So there's the task for this student. When you go in here, can I just, this is one thing I really big on teaching my students to do. It's a habit because what a student will typically do, they come in here and they go, oh, I've got a worksheet I need to do. And they'll click on the worksheet, right? Try and teach your students to click on the thing at the bottom that says view assignment. When they do that, it opens a completely different view and they get a different view of everything than had they just gone straight into the worksheet itself, right? Now they get a different thing. Now they can see the rubric, for example. They can expand the rubric out and actually see, oh, that's what I'm being graded on. They can expand the next view out. So they get their rubric, so they know what they're being graded on, performance-wise. Over here, they get the hand in button, which is really important. That's what we talked about before. The kids are not pressing the hand in button. If you get them to click the view assignment and get to this screen, the hand in button is right there. Okay, so it's a lot easier for them to remember to do it. It also gives them the screen where they can ask a comment. Hey, teacher, how do I do this? Right? How I do this? Whatever. You get the idea, right? So you can put comments in there. There's class comments, which all the students and teachers see, and there's private comments, which only the teacher sees. Again, if you don't go to the view assignment link, you miss a lot of this stuff. So teach your kids to click that little view assignment thing. Now, as a student, I need to come in here. I'm going to view this assignment. So let's go and have a look. This is the work that, did I just kill my link? I think I did. Hang on.
Yes, your presentation dropped off there, Chris.
Yeah, I closed the tab accidentally. What's the meet code, Brian? Do you know?
Oh, you're still in the meet, so.
Oh, I'm on 2 computers, though.
Okay. I'll put it in the chat. INJ GB OTR. Sorry about that, guys. That's what happens when you click the wrong thing. Present. I think you need to let me in, Brian. Yeah, just have again.
So. Join now. Okay, gotcha. Okay, and I was showing you this. Okay. I got too enthusiastic and pressed the wrong button. Okay, so you're now seeing the student's work. So the student does this, or today, what's today? Today is Monday, I think. Tomorrow will be Tuesday, and so on. So you do the assignment, you do the worksheet, right? And once you've done it, the student doesn't need to save anything because it's a Google Doc. It saves automatically. So all you need to do is close that tab. I'm not going to make that same mistake again, right? and go back to the actual assignment. So up in the corner here, here's the assignment the student's done, right? It's still attached, but now it's completed because it's a Google Doc and because it's always, there's only one copy, it's always current. And they simply hit the hand in button and they hand that in, right? And that will now mark that as submitted. An interesting thing, when that gets submitted, what it does is it changes the permission on that document from the student being able to edit the document to now they're only able to view the document. So when they hit the submit button, it takes away their editing rights. Much the same as if they'd handed in a piece of paper. They can't write on the piece of paper after it's handed in, right? Because you've got it. So the same kind of thing here. If I go back to Classroom, so I go back to the teacher view of Classroom, which is this one. And I go back to my class there. Yep. I go back to that classwork page, you can see here's the task that this student has done. Where am I? Oh, getting all muddled now. My task. That's all right. I might view the assignment. Okay. Oh, I'm still in the student view. Oh. That dropout completely threw. All my windows are not where they're supposed to be anymore. So I don't know if I can show you this. Let me see. Yes, I can. Okay, we'll do this. Right, sorry, I'm back where I'm supposed to be now. Okay, so I'm back on the classwork page. I'm back, now I'm the teacher again, right? So you see, as a teacher, I go in here and I say, let's view that assignment. I can see that I only have one student in this class right now, Helen Highwater, and she's turned it in. Fantastic. No other students are outstanding. Helen hasn't got a mark yet, but it's out of 10. If I want to grade Helen's work, I click on that, that thing there, go into what's called the grading screen. And so I can now see the student's work. And I can start to leave some feedback from my students. And this is where Classroom excels, is the feedback. So many ways to give feedback. So for example, she's misspelled Tuesday. I can go in here and leave a comment using a little comment tool here. And I'll say, check spelling. Don't you love the way you always misspell the word spelling? Right? So I can leave that comment for that student. And when the student comes back, she can leave a comment for me going, whoa, what's wrong with it? And I can leave a comment for her going, that's not how you spell Tuesday. And right, we can have a conversation about the work, not just on the work, and so on. So I can leave a whole bunch of comments here. When the time comes to grade, you'll notice that the rubric is over here on the right-hand side here. So in terms of factual information, this rubric's not really ideal for this task as a demo, but let's say she did really well for that one. Use of a visual was, I can't remember. What were the criteria? I can unpack that. I can see the criteria there. So I can say, oh yeah, she was satisfactory in this one. So I click on the satisfactory, it adds the 3 out of 5. And then of course for speaking, the oral presentation, okay, so I can say, yeah, she did really well on that. So I'll give her 4 marks. And you can see it's added it up here. She's got 9 out of 15, and which scales to 6 out of 10. And when I return that to the student, I'm now giving that work back to the student. So just in that little simple example, we went from creating an assignment, giving the assignment to the student doing the assignment, handing it back, getting some feedback, grading the work, giving the student the work back. Like the whole feedback cycle and the whole workflow cycle was just completed, all without paper, all pretty seamlessly. That's the whole point of Classroom. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to make that part of your teaching job easier. Let me go back to Classroom itself over here, and you'll see now on the teaching screen that says one assignment is graded. And what I can also do is, it's a bit hard to do from here, but if I can do it this way. If I go to the People tab and I click on my student's name, I actually get a summary of that student and all her work. Now, it's one student with one piece of work, not a great example at the moment, but if I go to a different class, like if I go to this demo class, for example, and I look in this one, you'll see this class has a few more students in here. There's sample students, of course. And if I click on one of these students, so let's click on Helen's name here, you'll see these are all the pieces of work this student has done. And you can see, I can see when it was due, what category it belongs to. whether it's assigned, she hasn't handed it in, whether she's turned it in, if it's been graded, I can see the grade. So I'm getting everything on one page. That on parent-teacher nights, when you're sitting there with the parent, you want to just get that one summary of that one student, that's a great screen. And also our overall grade there as well. All right. I'm mindful of time because we are at time. So real quickly before we wrap this up, I'm just going to go back to our slides here. And there was a couple of questions that came in advance. I just want to really quickly done. We've mentioned this one before about whether you have one class or several classes and you share between them. No right or wrong answers. I would go with multiple classes and share between them. There was a question here about once you create a Google Classroom, how do you delete the classes? Not archive them, but delete them. It's a two-step process, a little bit like emptying the recycle bin on your computer. If you want to get rid of a file on your computer, you put it in the bin. It stays in the bin until you empty the trash, right? It's the same in Classroom. If you right-click on a class on that main class screen, you have the option to archive a class. And then if you go to the settings menu on the left-hand side, go all the way to the bottom, you'll see there's an archived class list. Go in there and you can select that same class and now delete it. So it's a two-step process. Once you delete it, it's gone for good. When it's archived, archiving is like freezing the class. So when you archive a class, it still exists. Any students who are a member of that class can still access it, but they can't do anything in there. I would suggest you archive things rather than delete them unless you really know you want to get rid of it. Because my classic example, let's say you have a year 11 class and a year 12 class. That's a 2-year course, right? So you want year 12 students to be able to go back in and look at year 11 work, even if it's technically not the class they're currently in. So I would be archiving stuff so they still have access. Another question we had was, can an e-portfolio be formed in the Google Suite? Someone just upload and showcase their best work. Look, I would use Google Sites for that. I think Sites is a great tool. In a previous school I worked at, we used Blogger a lot. Blogger is great. I love Blogger, and to be honest, it's probably the best kind of portfolio tool for the way I like to do portfolios, but it's not a core service in G Suite. It's a consumer service. So all that stuff I talked about before about the difference between G Suite services and non-G Suite services, Blogger's a non-G Suite service. So you don't get the same level of control over it. You can't absolutely lock it to the domain. You can't absolutely control it. When I used to do it, I used to go in and as a class, I would help all the kids set all the settings the right way so it was set up the right way, but there was nothing stopping them from going back and opening it up again when I wasn't looking, okay? Whereas if it was in G Suite, I could lock it down. Sites can be locked down and managed within the domain. Blogger can't. They're both great tools. If you have older kids and they're responsible, then maybe Blogger's something you could look at. Again, you've got to be over 13 to use Blogger. Whereas Sites, because it's within G Suite, completely manageable and you don't have the age limit problem. So I would use either of those tools for a portfolio. There was a question about age restrictions on apps classed as additional services. There was a really good response to this in the Google support documents that talked all about the differences between core services and non-core services and what the implications of the age restrictions are. So I will share these slides with you afterwards and you can click on that link. It's probably the easiest thing unless you want to take a photo of the screen and grab that URL. But there is a good support article there about it. The bottom line is if it's an additional service or a non-core service, you can use it, but you do need to make sure your kids are over 13 in general. It does vary a little bit from app to app, but generally it's over 13. And you also need to make sure that your users are aware. You need to inform your users. So you need to let them know what they're doing. If you follow that link, there is actually a template you can use to send home to parents to inform parents about the use of these tools. So hopefully that will help you with that. Someone asked this question and I don't understand it, hence the dog's face there. How do you do an effective, secure YouTube giveaway contest? If that person is in the chat, please unmute your mic and tell me what you meant because I honestly don't know what the question means. Otherwise, I will pull the same face as the dog and we'll go on to the next bit. Okay. I don't know what a YouTube giveaway contest is. Oh, and that's the last slide. So with that, as I'll wrap up, I'll hand back to Brian.
There was just a final question from Maxine. Info that you can share on Jamboard.
Oh yeah. So Jamboard, part of G Suite. It's like an interactive whiteboard, but it's not. It's both hardware. So it is actually a physical board that you can mount on your wall or wheel into your room. But the vast majority of Jamboard users never use it on an actual physical Jamboard. Most people just use the software version of Jamboard, which is sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second so I can talk at you. Stop. Okay. Do you guys see me? Okay. So the Jamboard software there's two flavors of it. There's a web-based version which you can get by going to jamboard.google.com, and you can use it directly in your browser. I always use Chrome, so I don't know what it works like in others, but any modern browser should work. Or there's a app version, and the app version is for both Android and iOS. If you're running Chromebooks, you can run the Android version on your Chromebook because Chromebooks support Android now. And so you've got several options about how you use Jamboard, either on a real physical Jamboard or on the web or on iOS or on Android on a Chromebook. So there's plenty of options there for you. And what it is a shared collaborative space. So think about it as just a canvas that you can write on, draw on, add sticky notes to, and multiple people all together can be all using it. So you can all be scribbling, sharing ideas. We use it at work with like brainstorming sessions, people putting up little sort of digital sticky notes, especially like if you're doing something like I'll be dealing with a team in the US and a team in Singapore, and we're in Sydney, and we're all huddled around this virtual space, sort of collaborating together on this on these sticky notes and drawings and sketches and stuff. So that's what Jamboard's about. So I'm not sure who asked that question, but like, was there more about Jamboard you were hoping to?
Yeah, that was Maxine who was asking. So you'll just have to unmute your microphone there, Maxine.
No, I'm just sorry. I'm just a beginner with it, and I see potential. So I'm just getting used to typing in the sticky note.
Right. Well, we have announced. There is a timeline on it, but I can't talk about timelines. But I can tell you the feature has been announced that there will be integration between Meet and Jamboard. So right now, if you've got a physical Jamboard, if you've got the actual hardware, there is a button up in the top corner of the Jamboard hardware where you can, if you're in the middle of a sketching session, for example, and you need to talk to the team in Singapore or something like that, you can actually just open up a Meet, and the Meet will operate right in concert with the actual Jam. So that's that idea. I haven't actually seen it working outside of the physical board, but that idea is coming to the software itself. There are some differences between the web version and the app version. There's a little bit more functionality in the app because you can do things in an app that you can't yet do easily on the web. So things like text recognition. So on the app version, if you write words, you can get it to recognize the text and turn it into sort of printed text for you. Recognize shapes. So if you draw roughly a square, it'll turn into a proper square. If you draw a picture of a bicycle, it'll turn into an actual bicycle, things like that. Which you can't do that on the web version yet. The web version is mainly pens, inking, the sticky notes, and the ability to put pictures in. Yeah.
Thank you.
But check the app version as well because it has some nice extra features, and they do work together. So you can be in the same Jam session with some people on web, some people on app, and you can all be working together.
Good. Thank you.
That's okay. No worries.
Well, thank you very much for today, Chris. It's been fantastic to have you on the call today, and I'm sure, everyone, no matter where they're from, will, very much be thankful for the learning that we've had from you today.
No, thanks, Brian. Thanks for inviting me in, and it's lovely to see so many familiar faces and to be able to have a chance to chat with you guys.
Now, Helen will email out also the feedback form. I've put it in the chat. If you're able to give us that feedback, that'd be great, so we can start developing additional webinars that can support educators from across New South Wales, but also beyond New South Wales. That would be really, really helpful. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. What's left of it?
Brian, does the form still have a secret word on it?
It does have a secret word on it. We forgot to talk about that, but we can quickly I was actually thinking Betcher boy, so
All that.
so yeah, we'll go with Google. That's easy.
For all the people that have missed it because they had to leave.
That's all right. Yeah, sorry, I went over time. My bad.
I know. Oh, we went over. We often get talking, so that's okay.
I'm just quickly generating a short link for that those slides too, in case you want the slides.
Can I ask one more question? Just a quick one.
Of course you can.
Some of the folks were saying how handy it was that you were able to show the student view and the teacher view. When you're working with schools, do you have a suggested method of how they test themselves as a student, or do you just get them to set themselves up in Google Classroom as a student so they can switch between views, or is that not something that...
What, for teachers, you mean?
Yeah, just as a way that they can see what the students see, because obviously that's something that teachers want to be able to do. So have you got a sort of best practice way that you like to help people consider how to do that?
If you're in a school that has access to your administration console, in other words, you can create your own users. So if you're in a New South Wales department school, for example, you probably can't do this because it's all being controlled upstream from you. But if you're in a system where you can request additional users or make them yourself, you could consider just like making yourself a handful of dummy users, and then sort of, you know, share the login information around between various staff members. So if they wanted to test it, they could simply open an incognito window, log in as the dummy student, and then add that student to your class. So then you can switch between and see the two views. That's probably the only real way to do it right now.
Yeah, so that's obviously why a lot of people perhaps haven't seen it, because they're working in, a jurisdiction where it's not possible for them to set up a test account, so they can't really switch between those views.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's a good suggestion, and I don't know why we haven't done it. I mean, when I think about it, I think there's technical reasons why it would be difficult to do. So maybe that's the reason it's not done yet. I'm not sure.
If you're on a grade with multiple teachers, though, couldn't you just have one teacher and add the other teachers as the students? And
yeah, sure.
It's about once you've seen it once, it kind of works. After that, and you kind of have got the feel of that student view. It's getting the first feel of the student view that's the hardest.
Yeah. I guess I'm asking from that perspective of, you made that great point, Chris, that, during COVID, a lot of people that perhaps wouldn't have worked in this environment have had to get up to speed fairly quickly. So there'll be a lot of people who are still finding their land legs and thinking about how they can do things. And I was just kind of asking from that point of view.
Sure. Yeah.
I think one of the big things that we have to do coming out of COVID is exactly that. How do we keep what was good, and how do we keep upskilling people, and how do we help them realize that they need to keep upskilling? So, yeah.
On that
I think the COVID-19 was